Alrighty, so this show is about delinquent dropout high school students who still have some time left to finish high school right, so they are sent to the toughest high school around named OTOKOJUKU, I guess. I think it's called. I don't know why, but all the high schoolers in the show look like 30-year-old, muscly, testosterone-filled prison men. And over the course of the show, all the guys grew tougher and closer as they came into the room. Other students from other schools, and just other different grades in general, start challenging them and propel the need for, just getting stronger in general. Now, I never watched the anime called Prison School, but I remember when I was a teenager it was really popular, and it looked pretty funny. The way I understood the whole concept was that it was basically an extreme edgy comedy about friends being trapped together in a prison and pretty much being the straight man out amongst these like crazy sexy prison guard women, kind of. It seemed very meme oriented and was kind of there for you to of course relate with the cast of boys as they go through these insanely hilarious sexual different situations and try to survive. SAKIGAKE OTOKOJUKU, or whatever this fucking thing's called, seemed like a show that was aiming to pretty much do the same thing, but in a slightly different way. Heck, I wouldn't be surprised to hear that the creators of Prison School were inspired by the show in some way. In both shows, it's fun to watch these characters struggle and work together through unfair situations that their authorities, of course, have put them in. But in this show, instead of being surrounded by women, the school is, in this case, is all male, and the teachers are overly masculine, Andrew Tate-looking guys, and the show is extremely homoerotic. But I would say that it's done in a way that most people would find somewhat funny, especially compared to, like a fucking, Borat, Our main character is Momotaro Tsurugi, and his personality is the classic anime trope of a guy with a laid-back, chill demeanor, but with dangerous skills. Because of his kindness, he is often overlooked by all the other characters in the show. But then people start to learn just how strong he really is when they see him in action. I think there might have been something about him coming to the school on purpose or whatever. He wasn't just like a failed disciplinary student, like he was planned to be there or whatever. Well, maybe I misheard it, I don't know. Or something where, he was never a delinquent and had a greater purpose, but, I don't fully remember. Of course, I pointed out that the character is a trope, but I definitely would say that it is done well. And his character does not take himself too seriously, and he does coincide with the other wacky characters and events in the show. In general, the character is pretty fun and likable, and his fights are fairly badass, despite this being a comedy series. Pretty much like the second in command and his best friend, I guess, throughout the show is Genji Togashi. He was a ton of fun. He started off as a contrarian against Momotaro or whatever, but for little to no reason. And in the beginning of the show, he blamed him for tattling on him when he didn't or whatever, but it was funny. The whole interactions were just funny. Back in the first episode, Genji, he calls Momotaro Momo, which is funny, which I think means fucking like gay or faggot in another language, I'm pretty sure, which makes it even funnier. And I'm pretty sure that is what the joke is with the actual character. Genji thought it was weird that Momo didn't want to rebel against the school and, and stuck up for himself and whatever. And after having a super over-the-top meme fight with Momo, that's when the two became best friends for life. And their, Naru Sasu-like relationship then began to blossom. The character is very brave and angsty, and of course, he's ready to fight head on. He's like the grouchy tough guy persona. The persona is hilarious, and he plays off the other characters very well. Overall, very likable character. Honestly, it gets better as the show goes on. The principal, his name I forgot how to fucking pronounce his name, honestly. And you know what? I don't even need to fucking say his name because he says his name plenty throughout the show. He's the embodiment of an alpha chad. Just the absolute fucking funniest, Tate-like character. He commands his students to essentially like gangbang the whole area and defeat the other schools and challengers. Every time anyone questions him, he just shouts his name back at the person and fucking trudges through them. As the show goes along, we see that there is a method to his madness, and he's not just a cruel asshole, or for the most part. There are characters like I think his name was like Teo and Tezawa and Kiyomi, which surprisingly enough get more developed and likable as the show goes on. They are hilarious, and their personalities do feel quite unique from one another. I would even go as far as to say as they feel somewhat like people you could have met at school or work or anywhere. Hidemaru Kogoguchi, or whatever his name was, I can't say these names well at all, was, some like rich kid brat character, who belonged to some big like gang crime family called Bad Guys Incorporated, like literally, or something. Again, fairly generic character. A character you've seen a million times he works well exactly at what, the character is trying to do. He eventually is forced, after he's defeated, which is funny, after a whole fucking shitload of hilarious fucking weird antics ensue, fucking challenges the school and blah blah blah, and apparently like they fucking, the school, the kid proves that the school fucking dishonored him, so the school has to allow the kid to fucking torture one of the fucking students. It is so stupid, but it was funny. After a bunch of hijinks ensue, he is eventually forced, to join the school, and everyone bullies him, and it's funny, it's hilarious. Everything about him was nonsensical and ridiculous, in a very silly way. His character, generally got better as the show moved along as well. There was a show called Jay, which was a cool, American character. He had a stupidly ridiculous punch called it was so fucking retarded. Every time he said it, I laughed. He called it the Mach Punch, and he says he would explain it in such an anime way. It would be like, oh, there's nothing like it. It can destroy anything. He described it in this like technical way, and it's just a stupid. It's just a heavy right hand. It just fucking destroys everything. The other characters were ridiculously funny about how pathetic they all were. Just real fast, I wanted to go over some hilarious highlights and some things I wanted to mention. The principal and all the teachers were the definition of over the top, and I absolutely loved it. They were the classic tough guy, like prison warden-esque archetype, and it was all done in such a funny way, as the teachers abuse the students and everything, it was all funny, and of course, as with anime, stuff like this, like there's a lot of, the overly gay, silly, tough guy humor was also pretty, funny, and, it may unsettle, noob anime fans, or normies in general, but, I think the raunchiness in this case of the show works. It doesn't exactly go too far. I will say, though, that there really isn't a lot to the humor, but in general it was just quick and to the point, so it shouldn't bother you too much. There was always something wacky and interesting going on. Torture, and the general torture of the students was always so ridiculous and over the top that it was hilarious. The silly tough guy personalities worked so well for all the characters. Their cliche attitudes just played into the ridiculous nature of the whole ordeal. There were many times in the show where the instructors told the entire school to prove that they were the baddest around, and the result ended up with them rampaging throughout the neighborhood, fighting, local gangs and shit. And it was just the meme humor of the show was just always, prevails for me. It was always funny, not non-serious as always, As the show goes on, all the characters get really gay and close to each other. Not literally, but it's that kind of humor. And there's a lot of hilarious, of course, Naruto, Sasuke, power of friendship stuff. Which is fucking throughout all of anime, as you know. All the lore of this universe is so wacky and doesn't really make any sense. But the show does not take itself seriously, which makes it all hilarious, which allows you to forgive it a little bit. The episode where Genji had to get boiled because one of the gangs that Togashi destroyed wanted to torture one of the students as revenge. There was also this racist episode where one of the instructors tries to pick up, some girls or whatever, but ends up coming off as a creep. He ends up flirting with the wrong girl, and this fucking racistly drawn, gigantic black guy beats up the fucking teacher. The teacher then tries to have the students get revenge and tries to jump the fucking dude, which is all just fucking hilarious. It's all funny, but also fucking very obviously, racist episode. At one point, someone witnesses the same black guy with his friend at a store. I think, of course they were depicted to be like Americans, visiting. They flirt with the cashier girl and, get her to give them something for free. As they walk out of the store, of course, the fucking racist anime, they make the black guy say something about, Japanese being naive and how women fall for Westerners having no backbone, or, something fucking ridiculous, Obviously, the fucking, people who made the show, fucking insecure as fuck, obviously, didn't, and they just fucking, it's just weird how, like, especially, in older anime, they slip in like weird little fucking, things, and this is just, funny. But, I would say in this way, like, the racism, is done in such a, nonchalant, like, funny way to where you can almost laugh at it and with it, and it's kind of funny. And, of course, as they finish everything, they also say that, Japan is a paradise for people like us, Then, the smallest student, that, sees this, he gets his ass kicked by trying to, fight all the guys or whatever for the sake of honor of the Japanese, of course, which when he gets back to the school, he tells everyone what happened, and he is very obviously, and it's all very obviously racist. The show's writers, we're obviously, just trying to say, people of that kind are looking to be like that here, and when they visit, and it's fucking stupid. And yes, there's one American white guy in the group, but it's, a group of mostly American white guys, very clearly saying something. However, I'm an edgy bastard, I don't give a shit. It's bad, it's stupid. But, it's done in a funny way, and it's funny. But, it's very obvious what it is, I'll be honest. Side characters grow in a funny and awesome way. There was one character that had a soft side and had a pet bird. The guy's, pet bird gets killed, and, his meme rage turns him into a fucking beast. And, there are older kids of the school, older kids, that challenge the students of the younger years to harsh environments and harsh, like, challenges and shit, like fucking, like Ninja Warrior challenge. It's fucking so retarded. But it's funny. They have to succeed through all these trials, and again, the lore is, this world is so absurd, but because it doesn't take itself seriously, I tend to not care. There was this hilarious episode where Togashi had to entertain an old lady, essentially. I forgot why, but he had to pretend to be her son, and for some reason that led to him having to wash her tits and give her a bath. And of course his classmates saw him in the act, and the whole scene was just really funny. And I don't know, maybe the crazy old baddie lady just wanted to fucking get naked with him or whatever, and that was the point, but it was so funny. Surprisingly enough, the fights are legitimately good and get better. However, towards the end of the show, there were some serious, well-handed character deaths actually that happened that actually just got undone, which I guess I don't mind, but still, all of the characters that died eventually were just revealed to have survived. The show is so comedic. The show is so comedic and ridiculous that I didn't entirely care that there weren't that much stakes, essentially. However, once you point that out, it definitely could bother you depending if you're, that kind of critic or not. Ultimately, I didn't care because I wanted to see these characters and, other projects, and, it's a comedy show, so I just didn't give a shit. But I know it will bother many other fans that where stakes are fucking everything to them. The plot lines are also, they get very ridiculous, and, the third year high schoolers challenging everyone else with a bunch of challenges. It was amusing, but it was just a fucking drag, honestly. I mean, it was all saved by excellent pacing and charismatic characters and excellent meme humor. But for me, this show gets a 6.5 out of 10. I really hope there are sequels because I would definitely check them out. And I would eventually read the manga as well. Overall, I recommend this to all anime fans alike. Check it out.